if you don't know what's happening to you during perimenopause, you feel like you're losing your mind. The lowered sex drive and the dryness, mood swings, irritability. You can't remember the name of the person you're talking to. You're legit like laying in wetness. It's
Oh,
just,
wow.
it's nasty. I know I'm not making this sound sexy and glorious
At all.
but I do promise you there are some things that you can do to mitigate.
Hey guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of It's Pretty Simple. I'm your host, Nikita, and Pretty Simple is a podcast for fitness, nutrition, life, and we're just working together to figure out our journeys on this. Today I have with me a guest. I have with me Jennifer, and she is the owner of Own It Personal Training.
First, thanks for having me on. This is my first time. I'm really, really, really excited. Okay, so brief history. I became a personal trainer in 2016, shortly after, I guess not so shortly. Start that over. Okay, so my story starts around the age 39. That's about the time when I decided to give up alcohol because it was getting in the way of me living the life I wanted to live. And when I gave that up, I ended up having more time, more energy, all sorts of more. And I ended up putting it in the direction of fitness. I found a small group gym, and that's when I discovered strength training. But not only did I discover strength training, I discovered a passion for fitness altogether. So while I was at this gym, I realized I wanted to coach women for a living. At the time, though, I was also getting my master's in organization development. I wanted to make the workplace better for people. So I ended up anyway in 2016 getting both my master's and my personal training certification. And then over the next 2 years, worked at gyms, worked in career coaching, kind of used both, but then eventually ended up transitioning full time to a gym. And a few months later, due to things beyond my control, I was let go of that gym, from that gym. But it ended up being the door that opened for me to start my own business. So at that point, I opened my one-on-one personal training business out of my house called Own It Personal Training, where I work with women to help them reclaim their health, embrace strength, and to do it without focusing so much on the scale. And then as of late, because of where I am in my life now, I have really narrowed that focus to working with perimenopausal women. That's where I am, and I want to help other women get ahead of what I've been dealing with.
Nice. It's really interesting, right? How as we progress, we kind of niche down with the same women in the same place of life where we're at. I just think that it's so much more, it's so much more helpful and easier to work with somebody who is at the same level of where we're at. For me, I started a long time ago, and as I've grown older, my clients have also grown older with me, and the new clients as well are, now in the age bracket that I'm in. So probably once I come to your age, I'll probably also be working with the same kind of women, perimenopause, and then maybe postmenopause. So how did you decide that you wanted to focus on perimenopausal women? Was it only because you're also going through it right now?
I think that was probably the biggest inspiration. But I think more so is that the more I learned about the perimenopause transition and all the effects it had on women's overall health, I just became really fascinated by all of these things and trying to figure out what we're in charge of, what we still have control over, what we don't. I've always found, like kind of like what you were mentioning, the level of relatability between what I do and where I'm at in my stage of life is a direct correlation.
Yeah.
So I think as I realized what was happening to me and I was learning about it, I realized that I was learning about it because I found it interesting, because fitness is what I do for a living and for a hobby, because we're, crazy like that, the ones of us who are very committed.
True.
But I realized that I knew a ton about it and the people around me did not. And so it became, I think, important for me to help bridge the gap, kind of deliver the message, be somebody who can help other women become aware of what was happening to them and why, because it's not something that's really talked about. It's being talked about more often now because the actresses we all admired as kids are growing up, and now they're going through perimenopause and they're screaming from the top of their freaking lungs about what's happening to them, and that's bringing awareness. So they've heard about this perimenopause, but they don't know that it's going to happen to them or what's going to happen to them. And honestly, if you don't know what's happening to you during perimenopause, like if you don't realize that's what it is, you feel like you're losing your mind, because so many things, so many symptoms are so life disrupting, and you don't know what's happening because you haven't likely changed anything to invite these circumstances in.
Oh dear.
But internally, your body is changing. So if women don't know what's happening to them, it could really amplify the depression and the overall symptoms of perimenopause, just because we start to worry about what's wrong with us. And then our stress response is amplified, and it's all this thing. So long story short, long already. I think I became interested in this area because it was happening to me, and because I really wanted to help other women understand what was happening to them.
That's why I'm really excited to have this conversation, because I mean, I still have a pretty long time, but it'd be nice to know what to expect in the future. Coming to that, for those who may not be familiar, could you explain what the difference between perimenopause and menopause is?
Sure. So menopause is the overall journey that we're on. The transition from beginning to end is the menopause journey. Think of that as like the umbrella. All the podcast people who are listening, I'm making an umbrella with my hands for some reason. Perimenopause is the beginning of it. Postmenopause is the end. And then there's one glorious day in the middle where you have that transition. But let me back up just a little bit. So perimenopause generally starts around age 51. But of course, it can start as early as the late 30s, early 40s. Perimenopause can last up to 10 years. Yeah. And so it depends how long you're in it by a variety of factors. They have, to my knowledge, not linked anything to genetics, like your mother's menopause is not going to be your menopause, which is unfortunate because my mom had a fabulous menopause and that's not what's happening to me. But yeah, so peri is the beginning, and it's usually marked by the first disruption of your of your regular period. That's usually the first signal that happens. Like you if you're not regular, it's harder to note when that happens. But if you have a regular period, usually the first thing you notice is they start to become irregular. In the perimenopause transition, then we also are experiencing the loss of hormones. We are not getting as much estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And these three hormones are what makes life happy and livable for most of us. I like to tell people, if you think about when you went through puberty and you were experiencing an abundance of those hormones all at once that were new, and so it made you a little crazy. In perimenopause, we are now experiencing a scarcity of those hormones, right? So it's almost like the reverse of puberty. So if you're a mom and you have a daughter going through puberty at the same time you're going through perimenopause, that's going to be quite a household. Oh.
Wow.
So you're in peri, got symptoms going on, and we can delve into those in a minute. But once you haven't had a period for a full year, that's the indicator that you are now postmenopausal. So you're perimenopausal, then you have a year where you've had no periods, then you become postmenopausal. When you
perimenopause, perimenopause, you said can last up to 10 years? The beginning of it? Whew.
Right?
It's worse than puberty.
Yes, way worse than puberty. I actually never thought about that difference in how long it can take. Now, it's not 10 years for everybody. There's just no way to tell. And some women go 11 months without having a period, and then all of a sudden they get one after 12, or right at 12 months, and then they start that counting over. So it's super frustrating. Like personally, my periods were irregular for a couple of years, and I was experiencing night sweats as well, was one of my bigger perimenopause symptoms. But then when I started controlling the controllables, as I learned more about what was happening to me, my periods actually became regular again, and I stopped getting the night sweats, which all sounds good and lovely.
Mhm.
But then part of me is like, well, now do I have to start this all over again? Like, is it going to go? It can go like this. It's a roller coaster. It's a journey, not a race. And every woman will experience it differently.
As far as my knowledge was, like at least with my mom, I didn't really ask that many questions, but I just remember that she used to have a lot of hot flashes. Like that was the main thing. So according to me, that was pretty much the only symptom, and then you just lose your period. So if you could enlighten me and educate me, what are the symptoms? Because this is not a place I've actually looked at so far, because I'm far from it, you know. So what
Sure.
are the symptoms that they might
Okay.
not even notice?
There's a ton. I'm just going to go through kind of the major ones and then maybe some of the weirder ones that I've experienced. So yeah, hot flashes is what we hear about all the time. Hot flashes can occur due to hormonal changes. When they occur, a hot flash feels like you're being heated up like from the inside out, right? So think about like almost like feeling like you're in an oven. So it's not like a all of a sudden you're hot, you're sweating. It's this build and you get red and it's like a pressure almost. It doesn't hurt, but it just feels like there's a monster like inside you, lighting a fire from the inside out. And they can last 2 to 4 minutes. And they are quite disruptive. Think about being, a woman CEO in a board meeting, presenting to the board, and then all of a sudden you're getting a hot flash. It's not something that's you really have too much control over. You can control the controllables, which we'll get into, but hot flashes is more of a biological response.
Uh-huh.
Um, so they can be very, very uncomfortable. Other symptoms are night sweats. And when I say night sweats, I mean you wake up in the middle of the night and you get up and it's like somebody drew like a body outline with chalk on your sheets and it's sweat. Like
Oh, wow.
like you have to change your sheets. Like, so I used to have to keep a set of sheets next to the bed, at least a top sheet, so that when I sweated in the middle of the night and got up and realized it was disgusting, my husband's in the bed. I'm not going to wake up and remake the whole bed, but I had to
Mhm.
put something down because you're legit like laying in wetness.
Oh, wow.
It's nasty. Um, Other things that happen, mood swings, irritability. So that's kind of very similar to puberty. Brain fog is something else that happens, and that is where you're in the middle of a conversation and you're talking about something you know very well, and all of a sudden you can't remember the name of the person you're talking to, right? Or like one time I was at a concert and all of a sudden I could not remember who we were seeing. It was freaking Pearl Jam. It wasn't like it was
Oh,
like some band, right? Like, and that can be scary because you think what's wrong with me. So can you imagine getting brain fog and not understanding that it's related to perimenopause? All of a sudden you think you have dementia. I mean, my heart like started pounding when that happened before I realized like
very.
what was going on. So your major heavy hitters then for perimenopausal symptoms would be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, mood swings, brain fog, which I almost forgot because of brain fog. Oh, and then let's not forget the lowered sex drive and the dryness. And when I say dryness, I mean, how detailed can I get here?
You mean like vaginal dryness?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
like think of a situation where you're using enough lube to slide you down a water slide, but it still feels like sandpaper.
Oh, wow.
So I know I'm not making this sound sexy and
At
glorious,
all.
but I do promise you there are some things that you can do to mitigate, which we'll get into. So I'm really I'm throwing at you like the worst of the worst. I don't have all of these things, especially not all at once. Um, And again, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of make it so these don't disrupt your life all the time or completely. Other weird symptoms of perimenopause, I get itchy ears, like deep in the canal. Like I'm like, my ears itch and I don't know what to do about it. People get, trying to think of of course, I'm trying to think of another weird one. This isn't weird one, but gut disruptions, right? All of a sudden your body is, oh, here's a good one. All of a sudden your body's more sensitive to all the things that bring you joy in life, like added sugar, saturated fat, caffeine, alcohol, and nicotine, right? So all of a sudden your body doesn't handle those as well. So you're forced to not give up stuff, but modify some of these pleasures to help make the perimenopause transition better, because all of those things amplify your symptoms. Now, I have to tell you, I put a hard boundary around caffeine because to me, life's really just not worth living if I can't have my coffee. But in doing that, I am also telling my symptoms, like, I understand that by making a non-negotiable around caffeine, that some symptoms are going to be amplified because of that decision. So every decision you make, not just in perimenopause this happens, but always has consequences. And the consequences in perimenopause are a bit more of a domino effect than we would like them to be.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. But yes, it is a bit scary. And I'm glad you said that not everyone gets all of those things at once, or, it builds up. So, guys, we're here to actually explain to you how we can manage all those symptoms and make sure they don't get so ugly. So let's dive into that area.
Okay. All right. So first, I'm going to go over some of the biggest things that happen during the perimenopause transition. Some stuff I've alluded to, but I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. And then we're going to go through how to combat each of those. I promise you that for everything that happens in perimenopause, there is something you can do to, I don't want to say alleviate, let's go with mitigate how the symptoms present. Okay. So one of the biggest concerns, and something I haven't really delved into yet, that happens with perimenopause is weight gain. Weight gain happens as a result of perimenopause, but also it's just age related, right? So actually a lot of things that contribute to weight gain in perimenopause are more age related than hormonal related.
Okay.
The problem is that they're happening at the same time. So it really doesn't matter who's responsible, but it does help us understand what we have control over and what we don't have control over. So two of the biggest things that happen that make us, that are maddening in regards to the weight loss, is a lot of us feel like we haven't changed anything we're eating. We haven't changed how we're moving or exercising. Yet all of a sudden my pants don't fit. What the fuck? So two things. Muscle loss is a consequence of aging, and it's further exacerbated by perimenopause. So even without perimenopause, we lose about 0.8 pounds of muscle. I think I'm saying that right, per year, just by aging. And then that's amplified by some of the things that happen in perimenopause. Now, what does losing muscle have to do with my waistline expanding? The more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism goes. The faster your metabolism goes, the more calories you burn. So what this means is we're doing the same things, we're eating the same things, yet how that's all being affected internally, actually, that didn't make sense. We're doing the same, we're eating the same, we're living the same, but our body's not responding the same way. So all of a sudden we feel like things are out of control because we're not doing anything different, but all of a sudden what we're doing is no longer working. This is simply a matter of we're losing muscle, so we're not burning as much fat, not burning as much calories, which means the scale is going to go up. So even if we were eating at maintenance, meaning you're eating exactly what you burn, so you were never putting on weight, if you're burning less just as a consequence of age and perimenopause, all of a sudden now you're in a slight calorie surplus, and that's going to add up over time.
Yeah.
The second major thing that happens that is age related and perimenopause related is there's shifts in where we store our fat. Yay!
Really?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
yes. Okay, so you
be
know
positive for
how.
me, actually. I'd like to shift where I store my fat to be like this.
Well, nothing shifts. Well, in my case, it did shift to the tits, but for the most part, it shifts from, most women carry weight in their legs, their lower abdomen, and their ass, right? That's what makes us curvy. That's
I
what
don't.
makes us gorgeous. Not you?
No, I
What
just
happens
carry it
to
like
you?
right in the center of my belly and my sides, the love handles.
Well, then you might not experience much of a change there, but it might
Hope it
intensify.
drops down to the hope it drops down to the ass and the thighs.
I wish it worked that way, but it does kind of travel up, for
Okay.
lack of a better term. So what happens is we have two different kinds of fat in the body. Subcutaneous fat, which I love saying because it's just kind of a fun word to say. Subcutaneous. I don't know. Maybe I'm just proud I can pronounce it.
I always mess it up, so I never say it.
I had to listen to it a few times and then repeat like I was learning a foreign language. All right, subcutaneous fat is the fat we were talking about, and it's visual fat. Like it's the fat like I can pinch an inch. It's the aesthetic fat. It's the fat when we look at people on Instagram with their good lighting and their, fake this and that and filters that we don't see, we don't think that they have. Visceral fat is fat that's stored in the belly, and visceral fat is metabolically active. What that means is it makes us more prone to diseases like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, having a stroke. So somewhere in the aging / perimenopause transition, we stop storing our fat in our thighs, our ass, in our low belly, and it starts appearing more here, kind of like where men store their fat, right? So all of a sudden you've gone from flat belly to curvy butt to having a little bit of a beer gut. And maybe you didn't even gain any weight. Maybe the scale didn't even change, but your pants are tighter in your belly. They might be looser in the ass, but what you're going to notice is they're tighter in your belly because of the way you're storing fat. Now, it's my understanding that they don't know exactly why this happens. This transition happens from subcutaneous fat to visceral fat. I have a theory. I have no idea if this is even a thing.
What's the theory?
But my theory is evolutionary or creation wise, whatever you believe, women were designed to have babies. And that means storing more fat around our hips, our thighs, our abdomen, just to enable us to be pregnant, to carry babies. And I don't think I'm going through all the science there, right? But we're built as women to have babies, is the short of the long of it. When we stop having our periods and we stop having our hormones that really are something that makes us who we are, we start to look like men. Like I think we just shift. We no longer need to have the fat storage in other places. And so it just ends up in the belly because there's no more use for us to be moms. That's my Paleolithic evolutionary theory of what's happening. But I'm sure it goes deeper than that.
Does our testosterone decrease as well, or does it increase?
Oh, that is a good question. If it was trying to make us into men, it would be nice if it increased, right? Because testosterone is wonderful. It does great things for the libido. It enables us to build muscle. But unfortunately, no. So that does poke a hole in my theory, because otherwise perimenopause wouldn't be that awful if we lost some estrogen but gained some
Let's get
testosterone.
up and build all the muscle, and yeah.
Right? Exactly. So it's the muscle loss and the shift in fat that are the two major contributors to weight gain in perimenopause if you haven't changed your behaviors. Other things that can contribute, medications. A lot of antidepressants, one of their side effects is they may cause weight gain. A lot of women need antidepressants in perimenopause, not everybody. But there are some antidepressants that don't contribute to weight gain as much. So if you are on medications like antidepressants or certain other things, you can talk to your doctor and see if there are varieties that are less likely to cause weight gain. Gut changes, our ability to digest is affected by the loss of estrogen. So we have a harder time digesting food and getting all the nutrients from the food. We also develop sensitivities to alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, added sugar, saturated fat, and all of those things can contribute to weight gain. Sleep disruption is another thing. Remember the hot flashes and the night sweats? Well, that's going to wake you up. And once you're up from that, it's hard to get back to sleep. So you're not sleeping as well. When you're not sleeping as well, your body's in stress response. You will be producing more cortisol. And while cortisol is a great hormone when it's working with us, when it's working against us, the stress response will cause us to have our metabolism slow down even further, which again, then will burn less calories. And then stress in general. Our stress response, again, when you're under stress, the body produces cortisol. And this is to protect you. But it's protecting you from what its perceived stressors are. So what does that mean? Our brains haven't changed that much since the caveman days. So when we experience stress, our brain thinks that like an animal is trying to kill us or that we can't find food to feed our families. It doesn't understand that our boss just put a meeting on our calendar and now we have to present to a room of 1,000 people with no warning. So it slows things down so that it can heighten your responses to danger, right? So modern stress still creates the old-fashioned stress response, which could cause weight gain, especially if you stay in kind of a flight or fight position, right? Like so many women, we live life at a certain level of stress probably all the time, not just women, but men and women. But this is about women. If we let our bodies stay in stress response for extended period of time, we will have more inflammation, metabolism slows down, it disrupts our sleep, all the other things we were talking about. So stress management in perimenopause becomes extremely important in preventing the domino effect from taking over all of our responses. So I think I talked a little bit about things that happen to you in perimenopause and some things that you can do, but I really didn't go into depth yet about all the things we can do. And it's not just that we want to focus on the things that prevent the weight gain. I'm focusing on that because the clients I work with, that's what brings them to me, that they're not feeling as good as they used to. They feel like they don't look as good as they used to. Their clothes aren't fitting, which is just a miserable experience when you're trying to find something to wear and nothing fits. It's maddening. It's the weight gain that usually grabs people's attention, but it's from all these other things that the weight gain is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it would be a very confusing time, especially if you're, like you said earlier, when you're following the exact same things that you were, and it just doesn't work anymore. And honestly, I kind of experienced that a little bit shifting into my mid-30s as well, from what I was capable of doing not what I was capable of doing. I feel I'm capable of doing a lot more now, but the way my body would respond to things from my mid-20s to my mid-30s is completely different, and I know that's the aging. I know nothing's really happening with my hormones yet, but the aging process makes that happen. And in my case as well, people come for the weight loss and the fat loss, but there's so many other things that's happening and we have to address that. So what are the ways that if you are now in perimenopause and you are struggling with weight gain, because that's obviously always the number one concern for women, right? Like it just seems to be like, what is happening? I can't fit into my clothes. We hear this all the time. So what steps can they take to, either manage their weight, maybe maintain where they're at, or also lose the weight a little bit?
Okay, so yes, there's a lot we can do to manage the symptoms that contribute to the weight gain, to not feeling as good as you want to feel or looking how you want to look. And I know the women that come to me and the women that come to you, weight loss is bothering them, or the weight gain is bothering them, I should say. But most of them I find actually just want to feel better.
Yeah.
But the weight gain is getting in the way of them feeling better because it's not as easy for them to move or perform daily life activities, and energy is affected. So it's not that everybody's so like weight gain focused, but the weight gain is what wakes people, I think, up to what's happening, because
Mhm.
that's the first thing they notice. Um, let's first talk about, no, okay, we'll talk about what people can do in perimenopause, but then I also want to speak to your audience about what you can do before perimenopause,
Yeah, that'd
because
be great.
preparation, 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 man, that's the magic potion. Okay, so things that we can do in perimenopause. First and foremost, I think it's important to identify what's in your control to change. For most of us, there's more in our control than we think, but we don't want to admit it because there's some things we just don't want to control, right? So we have to accept what's in our power to change. We have to want to change, and we change by building skills. So a lot of times you see these posts, and actually I'm working on one now where it's just like a list of things that you can do to offset weight gain. And the all or nothing brain of the woman, right? Your clients all like that too.
Yeah, I'm working on not being like that, but yeah, most of us are.
It's how our brain is trained, sees that as a to-do list.
Yeah.
It's not a to-do list. It's a list of skills we need to develop to help us manage our symptoms. And when we look at it as a list of skills and we try and develop one skill at a time, we'll have more sustainable success than treating it like a list and realizing we can check everything off of it maybe 1, 2 days in a row, but then we stop doing it. So it becomes an all or nothing. So as far as perimenopause symptoms, strength training is one of the best things you can do to mitigate the symptoms, not only from a weight gain perspective, but also from a mood perspective, from a brain fog perspective. Um, I can't say it's got any sort of correlation to the hot flashes. I can say that strength training helps everything else in the world, but I'm not aware of their science on that. So strength training is important to women in perimenopause and approaching perimenopause, because the more muscle you have, the more protected you are. We already established that the more muscle you have, the more fat you burn just by being alive, right? And other than making money while you're sleeping, burning more calories while you're living without doing anything extra, I can't think of bigger lottery tickets than those two things. But strength training also helps us protect our bones and joints as we become older, age related and perimenopause related. We lose bone density, and that makes us more susceptible to falls and fractures. So, strength training helps strengthen bones and mitigates losing muscle. We also want to talk about nourishment. I am not a believer in restricting anything. I think life is too short for that shit. But as we get older, we're going to notice a difference in how food is making us feel. And we need to pay attention to that. So when you're talking about food, I like to think about high value food and lower value food. All food has value.
Uh-huh.
but different foods have different levels of nourishment.
Yeah.
We need to prioritize the higher value foods that have higher levels of nourishment versus the low value foods because, like I said before, our digestive system is now not working as efficiently as it once was. And so it becomes challenged by saturated fats, extra sugar, and alcohol, of course, and caffeine, even, and nicotine. Um, so watching what we eat becomes very, very important. Also, you need protein and carbohydrates to build muscle. So we still need to eat a well-rounded diet. Carbs are important, protein's important, fat's important, but high value choices of those things help us stay satiated for longer so we're not as hungry. And they give us they give our body what it needs. It's also important, though, to remember to give the body what it wants because, again, life's too short. So what we're looking for is kind of an 80-20 split. And everybody listening to this probably thinks, oh, I eat clean. I'm in that 80-20 range. Great. Whole thing about eating clean is a podcast for another
It is.
time.
It is. Yeah. This is. I
But
eat clean, but I'm still gaining weight. Eating clean
yeah,
food does not mean you're going to lose weight or not gain weight. It's the quantity.
right. And so the clean food means it's a high value food. It's got a high nourishing value. And it's harder to eat a lot of high value foods because they are higher in calories, right? So
Yeah.
actually good for you foods are actually higher in calories generally than lower value foods. It's just easier to stop eating a steak when you're full than it is to stop eating a bag of chips because
Yeah.
you never get full and they just taste so good. So we want to just try and focus on high value foods. I always tell my clients to try and load their days by eating what they need first. Make sure you're getting your protein, your fiber. So basically protein, vegetables, and fruit. And then if there's space left, have some fun foods, have some of the lower value foods. But anytime you're eating, try and eat your high value foods on your plate first. We just want to prioritize those. Those are also just in general going to make us feel better. So learning to eat in accordance with how you want to feel. When I have breakfast every day, I start with, I usually like a bowl of oatmeal with some protein powder, some flax seeds, and some blueberries. I also love a blueberry muffin, right? I guess it's a blueberry theme. I choose the oatmeal because I know I have to go through 4 clients. So I've got 4 clients, 3 to 4 clients in a row generally, and I'm not going to be able to eat. So I want something that's going to sustain me. I also want to make sure I have energy. And I also want to make sure I don't have any gastrointestinal issues because nobody wants to work with a very farty trainer.
True.
If I was to choose the blueberry muffin, after probably half hour to an hour, my energy would dip, right? Because it's a lower value food. So I'm going to get a sugar spike, but then I'm going to come down. I'm going to get hungry in the middle of my session, and nobody wants a hungry trainer either. And I sometimes have hard time with fructose, so I might get some very farty. So I'm going to choose the oatmeal because what's going to serve me to accomplish what I want to accomplish. So when choosing foods in perimenopause, if you try and learn to develop the skill to eat for how you want to feel, that's going to help you make better choices down the road. Other things we can control, getting more movement in our day. So these are things like steps, fidgeting, housework. Anytime you're moving, even me just sitting here doing this,
Yeah.
I'm burning more calories and having a little fun than sitting still.
Yeah.
And improving your opportunities to move throughout the day has a bigger effect on your overall metabolism, on how many calories you're burning all day, than just saying doing a bout of cardio. Like a bout of cardio, you might be burn 200 calories. Great, nothing wrong with that. But walking and moving throughout the day will just increase the burn throughout the day as opposed to just one blip.
Yeah.
Same thing with strength training. As you know, you burn calories while you're strength training, but the bigger bang for the buck comes that you're burning more calories after you're done strength training because of the muscle repair that's going on. So that's kind of more of the making money while you sleep thing. You worked out and the rest of the day you're burning more
Burning
calories.
more. Yeah.
Other things you can control, and I know this list just gets long: stress management, sleep hygiene, listening to your body in regards to recovery. More is in perimenopause, more is not better, better is better. If you exercise when you're exhausted, it's
Yeah.
going to become a negative stress on your body, and all the good you thought you were doing, it's just going to work the opposite way. Your body's going to go into stress response again. So just to sum up, figuring out what you're in control of, what you have the power to change, wanting to change, and building the skills you need to change. All of the things that I said happen to you in perimenopause. Most of them have an aspect that you can control with behavior change. The important thing to remember is the behavior has to be a permanent change.
Mm-hmm.
Temporary changes yield temporary results.
Yeah. I mean, like everything that you've mentioned now is pretty much what I currently do and what I also teach my clients. So it's like we're already building this base from now before coming into that, because I also feel it's different for each generation, obviously. And I think my generation, we're in that middle where, some of us are really getting into fitness, or we got into fitness, while other people are still like, I'm okay. The younger generation, everyone's already into fitness and everything because social media, and there's, health, less people are drinking now and more people are taking care of their health. But I feel like a lot of people maybe in my generation could be just waiting until it happens and then they want to take action. And it's the same thing that I experienced with a lot of clients that I've had over the past few years, that once they crossed 30, then they said, oh, I need to now build muscle. And it was like, if you did it in your 20s, if you started in your 20s, it would already be a habit. So now the things I implement in my life and I'm implementing with my clients as well, seems like we're going to be on a pretty good path when it comes to perimenopause.
Yes, 100%. The younger you start, especially with strength training is money in the bank, right? It's how you build your savings account to protect you from the effects of aging and perimenopause. So yes, the work that you're doing with your clients is one of the major things that will help them be ahead of the game when perimenopause starts. Younger generations, and this is wonderful, Gen Z is, from what I understand, they're taking to strength training very much earlier than we did. And like my nieces in high school, they're getting strength and conditioning training in their gym class. So they're
So
being
lucky.
exposed at a much earlier age, which is fucking phenomenal. I do train most of my nieces, like ages 15, 16, 17. So it's a joy. Um, but yes, your clients getting ahead of the strength training and the work you're doing with them on nourishment and prioritizing protein and fiber, those are ways to get ahead. The other two biggest things that nobody wants to do, and I didn't want to do them either, is proactive stress management and focusing more on recovery and sleep.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned before, more isn't better, better is better. That is really hard for somebody in my generation, and I imagine even your generation, to wrap their heads around, because we were taught that more is better. We are defined by our accomplishments. We wear strange badges of honor. Like, I haven't slept in 16 days. I worked out 42 days in a row. I ran 6,000 days this year.
Yeah.
We're proud of these things when in
Yeah.
fact we should be proud of, I journaled 6 days in a row. I got 8 hours of sleep for 5 days in a row. It's backwards ass. So convincing somebody that they have to do these things to take better care of themselves, it's a really, really hard battle for me as a trainer to help my clients. It's been a very, very hard battle because I've struggled with it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working with a trainer for the past 2 years because I needed help doing the things that I didn't want to do, the same way that people hire us for helping them do the things that they don't want to do or help them learn how to do them. And from her is where I realized how important this proactive stress management was. This past year, 2024, my husband was unemployed. We said goodbye to our dog after 16 years. I started ramping up my business into the online space, and it was incredibly, incredibly stressful.
Can imagine.
And at the same time, I started putting on weight in my midsection and my boobs. Now, a lot of women are like, "Oh, yeah, I'd love to
Yeah,
have
yay.
the." I was a perfect C. I mean, a hanging perfect C, but a C nonetheless. And girl, they grew to a double D. So nothing fit. I like walked into a room, I was all boob, and nothing's wrong with double Ds. I mean, honestly, they were beautiful because they were fuller and bigger and not as wrinkly and saggy, but they hurt, and I couldn't wear anything, and I couldn't like lay down to do an exercise. It was just very disruptive. But here I was tracking my food because I care about what comes in and what comes out. And I don't like to ask my clients to do something that I'm not doing. I think it's a
Yeah.
good learning experience. I thought I was sleeping. I thought I was protecting my time. So I thought I had changed nothing. And all these things are happening to me. Well, what had happened is I got caught in stress response. So I was in a cortisol spike that led to insulin resistance and my body just not processing things how it should. So it showed up in weight gain. So this affected my energy levels. So here I am now, uncomfortable with how I look, uncomfortable with how I feel, and too tired to even do anything about it. So it was maddening. What I finally realized was I couldn't just start responding to the stress. I had to prevent the stress. I had
Yeah.
to proactively manage the stress. Now, I am a hippy dippy girl and I'm a writer, but I fucking hate journaling. I hate meditating. I hate all the stuff, right? I don't want to do any of the stuff. Stillness
Have
doesn't
to
serve
do
me.
the stuff.
You have to do the stuff. And I resisted and resisted. I resisted. And my wonderful 30-year-old brilliant trainer telling this 50-year-old, 51 or whatever, that I had to relax. I was like, you don't even know. You don't even know. But you know what? She knew. She fucking knew. And so I started with a gratitude journal every night. It's 4 questions. I give myself 2 minutes. If I can't think of an answer, I just skip it. So it's in my bathroom where I brush my teeth, and the pen is out on the counter, not counter, like bathroom sink,
Yeah.
as the cue to remind me to do it. So that helped me set my brain up like with a gratitude perspective before sleep, which improved my sleep. So I really started to get like to feel better just from this one little action. So I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? So then I started journaling mid morning, and my rule is 1 minute. I put 1 minute on the calendar
It's
on the
easier
clock.
to do it that way, right? If you say I'm gonna journal like 2 pages, you're probably not gonna get it done. So saying I'm just gonna journal for a minute, you'll probably end up doing more than that.
Exactly. You got to set the bar really, really low. One of the biggest things that women do to themselves is we set the bar high because we don't think doing just this is enough.
Uh-huh.
But if you do enough small things consistently over time versus the list of stuff you never do, that adds up.
Yeah.
And I don't even write, I just talk to text. So I just grab my phone and start talking about whatever's on my mind. I
Right.
never go back and read it and correct anything. I just spit it all out. And to your point, most of the time I'm babbling for more than a minute, but sometimes I'm not. But what's rewarded is repeated. And your brain senses a reward when it accomplishes what you set out to do, no matter how high the bar. So, right, the 1 minute, if I do the 1 minute, if you do the 1 minute, your brain's like, oh, we did that. That was fun. We feel better. And it wants to do it again. Like my brain actually now craves doing the gratitude journal at night because it's such a good feeling. In fact, I bought a new one that allows for reflection in the morning and at night. So now I'm just crazy into all this stuff.
Nice, but people really underestimate the power of journaling and gratitude because I mean you'll do it a couple of times. It's not something that you feel an instant change, but it just builds up over time, and we just start feeling better. And you can't expect with a lot of things, you can't expect just overnight everything's gonna be okay, you know. So people
Right. And
not
we
do
live in
it,
a
and
world of
like I don't feel better, and it's like keep doing it.
yes, doing something once is a good start. But yes, consistency is the key. The challenge I think most women face with consistency is we connect consistency to perfection,
Yeah.
right? And there really is no correlation. First of all, perfectionism, being perfect, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in anything because there's always going to be room for opportunity to make it better,
Yeah.
right? Um, Consistency just means we show up to the best of our abilities and try not to miss 2 days in a row. That's what I tell people.
Yeah.
If you take consistency and you just apply the one rule of trying not to miss 2 days in a row versus I'll start over next Monday, your consistency skyrockets.
Yeah.
So even with these stress management techniques, do I do them religiously, perfectly every day? No, no. Life isn't linear, so you can't expect everything to fit in your life and your day the same way every time. Do I have 3 reminders that go off in my calendar to remind me to do them every day? Yes. Does that help? Yes, it holds me
Always.
accountable because either I have to click them off that I've done it or erase it that I'm not going to do it. So a lot of times I'll just try and leave it on there till I can, till I can get to it. But I'm telling you, the biggest thing somebody can do in perimenopause, before or during, outside of strength training, is stress management, sleep, and recovery. Slowing the fuck down, listening to our bodies, being happy with what our bodies can do that day, and not holding them to the same expectation the next day because too many things are happening with our hormone fluctuations that we can't control. So if I can go in the gym and deadlift 200 pounds one day, and the next day I can only do 100 pounds, but it feels just as heavy, heavy is heavy. I'm still being challenged. I'm still building muscle. But if my ego gets in the way, I'm just going to feel defeated and probably get injured.
Yeah.
So it's all about showing ourselves some grace. And all this stuff, I know it sounds like hocus pocus. I get it. But I'm telling you from someone who's in it, who has dealt with it, that these are the secrets. I
Nice.
can't change that.
Yeah, they work. I mean, right now I sleep without putting an alarm on, and it's the best thing that I've ever done.
Oh, I
You know,
love that
I
part.
always used to put so much pressure that I need to wake up at this time and I need to go and get my cardio session done in the morning, or I need to do this and this and this. But then at the end of the day, I was just like, I'm tired. I'm forcing myself to wake up when my body is still not fully rested. You know, I've had like a really hard training session the day before, but I'm still forcing myself to get up to go and train again. But why? Who's telling me I need to do this? So now the new way has been no alarm. When I wake up, I start my morning routine. I do all the same stuff, but it doesn't need to be at a specific time. And it's been great. Like some days I just need like 7.5 hours and I wake up without an alarm. Some days I need 11 hours and it's okay. I'm just allowing that to happen. And honestly, I feel so much better. And even my sessions at the gym are so much better. It's made a
Yeah,
huge
because
difference.
you're letting your body's clock, dictate what you're doing. So you're working with your, I'm going to have a brain fart moment and draw a picture of something that the people can't see. Um, your cortisol levels naturally fluctuate during the
Right?
day, throughout your sleep and wake cycle. And when you wake up in accordance with your body's clock, you are living in harmony with your cortisol cycle.
Uh-huh.
And I love the fact that you just said it puts less, like you still do all the stuff you intended to
All right.
do. You still accomplish things,
Yep.
but not on anybody's time schedule. More about you're just really in touch with how you feel, what your body needs, and what she's ready for on a day to day basis. The sucky thing is, a lot of people don't have the kind of lifestyle
Yeah.
that allows for that. But let's also look at, and this is just from what I know about you, what you've shared with me, you made a lot of changes to your life to enable that to
Mm-hmm.
happen. You didn't just wake up one day and be like, I'm just going to turn that alarm
Yeah.
off and fuck everything. You created a life that supports this behavior.
Yeah.
And too many of us think that we there's nothing we could do. But the life we've created for ourselves now could change as we change, enabling us to have more support and do what we need to do to allow our bodies to allow ourselves really to age gracefully, but also powerfully.
Yeah.
And, that was something that was probably very scary, all those changes you made during that time just to kind of change your life to support what you want it to be. It didn't happen overnight. You played around with it. You learned stuff that worked, you learned stuff that didn't work, and now you've got it dialed into what works for you.
Yeah.
And I think that's an opportunity that a lot of women miss because we say, I guess this is just how life is now,
Yeah.
right? We suddenly just accept the suckiness. B, change seems so hard that we don't even know where to start. And most of that is because we always try and start with the biggest thing that has the biggest bang for your buck. Whereas we should really be, going for that low hanging fruit, the thing we
Yeah.
can do most consistently most of the time. So there's a lot of things within our power that we either aren't aware of or we convince ourselves for some reason that we can't change. We just succumb. But I'm telling you, you either give in or you push back.
Yeah.
And this is that's the time for the all or nothing mindset to kick in, right? That's the one
Yeah.
time it should kick in. The rest of the time we need to learn to live more in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. That was yeah, I mean, these are all things, like I said, if people start implementing things early on, it just becomes part of your life. And then going into perimenopause, I mean, despite all those symptoms, you're already doing the work and you've already done half the work. So it's not as hard as if you are somebody who's just suddenly, you've not done any training, you don't really focus on your food, and then suddenly you're in perimenopause and you're just like, okay, now I'm gonna start everything. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's like if you think about it, you're starting to build a house, right? And when you first start, you just put up, I've never built a house, but let's just go with this.
Let's just go with it.
The four walls and a roof or whatever. The more time you spend building that house, the better prepared it will be when the tornado comes. And the
Mhm.
tornado is coming. So the women working with you now are insulating their house. They're putting barriers on. They're building thicker walls, better roofs, just more protection, right, against the storm. Even the people working with me, even if they're not starting till 40, 50, even if they're starting in postmenopause, better late than never. You
Mhm.
still have a chance to reinforce the house so it can withstand the storm. And the storm is coming.
The storm is coming. Yeah. I'm not excited for it, but I'm really glad that I could sit down with you today and actually get a bit of insight of really what it is from somebody who's currently going through it. And yeah, because I've got one client, I think right now, that she's almost gonna be there. And she's always like asking questions, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I don't really know where I'm going with this. Coming to that, is there any supplements that are helpful?
Yes. Now, not a doctor, so these are just some general recommendations. And I always suggest that women check with their doctor before making any changes like that because there's little nuances. If they're taking stuff, there could be interactions beyond my scope. But in general, and what I personally take, omega 3s to help fight inflammation and to also help with cholesterol and digestion. What else do I take? Vitamin D and calcium to help with bone health. Having a brain fart. Oh, glucosamine. I'm just thinking of the parts of me that hurt or are distorted and what I can. Glucosamine, chondroitin. I don't know if I'm saying the chondroitin part right. To help with joint health.
What is it? Sorry.
Magnesium. I'm sorry.
What did you say for the joint for joint?
It's something called glucosamine chondroitin.
Okay.
Glucosamine is one thing, and the chondroitin is another thing. I don't think I'm saying that right. That I don't have it spelled out in front of me. I generally get them in a pill together, and that helps with joint health.
Okay.
Magnesium can help with sleep and also inflammation. And the biggest thing I think that all women should take is creatine. You
Yeah.
supplement with creatine.
Yeah.
So, as you know, creatine naturally exists in our body. and supplementing with it increases the power that our muscles have. So we get the ability to, it enhances our ability to build muscle. It helps with brain fog. So it's actually something that they've been starting to give to like senior citizens to just help with clarity.
Uh-huh.
And, we talked about how scary the brain fog is. So creatine is good for building more muscle, brain fog, inflammation. What else? I think there's one more thing.
Even cognitive thinking.
Yes, I couldn't think of one thing. I did not take my creatine today, but yes, creatine is the
Me
most
too.
widely researched supplement, and it's not going to make you bulky. Like, let's just clear that up right now. If you're a woman and you're lifting weights, unless you're in a calorie surplus and you're supplementing with testosterone and steroids, you cannot get bulky. Creatine is certainly not going to do that for you.
Yeah.
Creatine can cause a slight weight gain, but it is water inside the muscle, not outside the muscle. So it's not the same thing, and it's actually going to help your muscles have a little bit more shape.
Yeah, I always
You
have to
want arms
explain.
like this, you should creatine and strength train.
Yeah, I always have to explain that because like people always tell me, yeah, I want to take creatine, but I heard it's gonna give me water retention. I'm like, it's on a cellular level, and it's actually gonna look good. So no stress, take it. I got my mom to start taking it. I'm not sure if she's still taking it, but I told her that she needed to. She doesn't train or anything, but I was like, at least let's do something. It's an easy thing. You can just
Yeah.
take creatine, you know. But yeah, it is super important. Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I really appreciate your time today. If you could leave my viewers with just one suggestion of what they can do now being in their 30s, just one of the most important things, what would it be from everything we spoke about?
Oh, the most important thing. Okay, I have to pick two.
Okay, go for it.
One, start focusing on strength gains instead of worrying about scale losses. So shift your focus at the gym. And two, proactive stress management. Start with a gratitude journal. Gratitude makes everything better. It's like putting rose colored glasses on for your heart and soul.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And I give you my gratitude for being on the show today with me. I
This
really,
was so
really,
much fun.
I had a great time and thank you. I learned a lot of things I did not know. And I really, really appreciate the time that you've given to me today. So thank you.
Thanks
Um,
for having me on. It was a blast.
for sure. All right, guys. So I will be putting Jen's details down in the comment section, so you can follow her on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are. And just like to say thank you so much for listening to the show today. Remember, if you are not subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button or follow on whichever platform you are listening to. I'd love to start a conversation about this topic. So if you are currently going through perimenopause or you are in postmenopause, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and let us know what you're going through and what your symptoms are, and if you have anything weird happening with you. All right, guys, thanks for hopping on, and I will speak to you next week. Have a wonderful day. Stay strong. Stay fit. Talk soon.